RBI, unlike other PSUs, public sector units, being independent entity, doesn't share dividend with the central government. Second thing, RBI's main functions does not include developmental role. Third thing, RBI does not allocate for unexpected contingencies from exchange rate operations and monetary policy decisions. So which of the above statements are incorrect? So try to note this and then do guesswork or logical analysis and try mark the option, and then we'll see the answer now. So before that, why this question came in? Because there was a tussle between central government and RBI about the transfer of surplus reserves of RBI. Because of that, our last governor Urjit Patel had to almost resign, and then a new governor came, and they appointed a new committee to do this. So that is why this was constantly in news. So they might not focus on that aspect, but they might focus on RBI basic functions. So that is why I have also framed this question. And second thing, in the next slide, we'll discuss in detail about how RBI works, what are the basic responsibilities, and then like what are the different reserve accounts and all. Okay. So here, if you use somewhat kind of logical approach, then you can say like here it is saying the first thing, RBI is not like an any other public sector PSU that can provide dividend to central government. So this option itself is wrong, because this RBI also provides whatever the surplus it earns in the form of dividend to central government. Because even though RBI is independent entity, at the end it is also an part of government. So if there is any surplus or profit, it gives to the back to the government. So that is why first statement is incorrect. Second thing, RBI's main function doesn't include developmental role. So this you may find tricky, but if you know a concept called priority sector lending, that is nothing but developmental role. What is priority sector lending? Where RBI directs scheduled commercial banks to give certain part of their loan portfolio to the regional development agenda, or for the small businesses, for the farmers and all. This is priority sector lending. So that is why second one is also wrong. And third one, RBI does not allocate for unexpected contingencies. If RBI doesn't allocate for this kind of thing, then why it need forex reserves and all these things? So that is why all the three statements are incorrect. So the option is C, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So now we'll see the in detail picture of RBI. So if you see, RBI initially started as a bank that was there from 1935, and in 1949 it was nationalized. After independence in 1949 it was nationalized. So the important functions that it does are these things. First thing, monetary authority. What do you mean by monetary authority? That means issuing currency and also maintaining that currency money supply in the market. And second thing, regulator and administrator of financial system. That means administering the NBFCs, all the scheduled commercial banks, giving them license, all of these things. And third thing, managing foreign exchange. This you all know, like how it keeps the reserves, buys the dollars, and sometimes whenever the rupee rate is low, it pumps the dollars into this. So this kind of open market operations comes under this. And fourth one, issuer of currency. You all know RBI prints the notes. And finally, developmental role. We just have discussed the priority sector lending thing. So now recently there was new responsibility that was added in the form of a amendment, and a new statutory recognition is given in the form of monetary policy committee. So monetary policy committee is a kind of 6-member committee that was given a mandate to keep the inflation within the target, that is to 4% with plus or minus 2 threshold. This also you have to remember. So this is the monetary policy committee mandate. So that was added in like in the previous years. That was the latest amendment. And then finally, if you see, as I said, RBI was in news because government was demanding around 3 lakh crore rupees from RBI to be transferred to the government. And RBI was saying, no, will not transfer because these are certain kind of reserves and we need that money to maintain the legitimacy of RBI. So to solve this dispute, after Urjit Patel left, they formed a committee called Bimal Jalan Committee. So it was headed by Bimal Jalan, and the framework of the committee is economic capital framework. Okay, so that determines what capital needs to be there. So finally, it recommended a transfer of about 1.76 lakh crore. And finally, RBI did transfer also this 1.76 lakh crore. So before going into the details like why it transfer and all, we need to know what where the RBI stores its surplus amount. So first of all, RBI generates some revenue. Like other companies, RBI also generate revenue. So how it will generate? There are various ways. For example, when it sells bonds or purchases government bonds, it gets certain kind of interest. So that is money, income for the RBI. Second thing, it also stores foreign exchange reserves. So whenever the dollar value gets appreciated, that foreign exchange reserve values also get increased. So this way it gets income. So once it gets income, it will reduce the losses or subtract the losses and keeps the surplus with it. And out of that surplus, some of them will be transferred to the government. So this is the basic way how it RBI works. But RBI also keeps certain amount of this surplus in the form of reserves in four accounts mainly. So what are those? First thing, currency and gold revaluation account. And second thing, investment revaluation account. Third thing, asset development fund. And fourth thing, contingency fund. So these four are very, very important. So if you see the first one, currency and gold revaluation account, basically talks about the revaluation of foreign forex reserves and gold. So we keep gold and foreign exchange reserves, that is dollar or other currencies of other countries for safety side to cover the imports. So whenever that get increased, that value gets also get increased. So that is CGRA. Second thing, contingency fund. So contingency fund is basically putting a portion of your fund to cover the exigencies, like if there is any emergency tomorrow or if there is any sudden fall in the value of rupee, then RBI also has to intervene. So for that purposes it puts a contingency fund. And then finally, investment revaluation account. Okay, so this is kind of two things. One is IRA foreign securities and IRA rupee securities. So these are nothing but the bonds, that security bonds that are issued by RBI to the foreign market and for the Indian market. So whatever the losses and profits are there are covered under this account. And finally, asset development fund. So in this asset development fund, RBI also invests, like a company invests, it also invests in certain kind of assets. So whatever the profits generated will form under ADF. So now you also need to remember what is the status, like which has a maximum amount or maximum weightage out of all the reserves. The order is first thing, currency and gold revaluation account has the highest. Okay. And next is contingency fund. And then you have IRA, and then finally asset development fund. So this is a kind of RBI reserves. So this needs also to be remembered because UPSC might not focus just on the controversy, but on the background theoretical concepts. So that is why we are discussing this. Okay. So now few committees. These committees are very important, not just from prelims, but also from mains point of view. So you can quote them. So far regarding the surplus that is needs to be provided to government, there were four committees formed. First committee was in 1997, that is Subramaniam Committee. So it said the contingency reserve should be at 12%, and whatever the rest is there, that needs to be transferred to the government. And then again, when this issue came up in 2004, Usha Thorat Committee uh, was also appointed, and this kept that same at 12.26 level. Okay. And then in 2013, H Malegam Committee. So this, based on this committee recommendations only, the last governor Raghuram Rajan transferred a chunk of amount to government. And then finally in 2019, when again this issue came, Bimal Jalan Committee was again appointed. So don't try to remember what they suggested, but try to remember the committee names, and it is associated with transferring the surplus, because they might give match and pair. Like they will give committee name and then they will give RBI or SEBI. For example, for SEBI also there are different committees. So this is something that you have to look about. So now we have seen all these issues, but still there are other priority areas where you have to also focus. That is, as I said, priority sector lending is there. You have to know what is the percentage, and you have to know whether non-scheduled commercial banks are covered under or under that or not. Okay. And then similarly, if you've seen recently, RBI was given extra power even to supervise and control cooperative banks. So now try to see before that, where was that power? And then Monetary Policy Committee. And then there were two important events that happened in 2019. That is Operation Twist and the open market operations. Okay. In these open market operations, what they'll do is they will sell, RBI will sell long-term securities and will buy short-term securities, or will do the reverse based on the condition of the market. So this way, what they do, they will either increase the interest rate or decrease the interest rate. So that is how they do this Operation Twist. So these are important tools of RBI for monetary policy. And LRO is nothing but long-term repo rate or long-term repo operations. So that is also similar to or subset of open market operations. And then finally, you all know RBI for every 2 months will have a committee and will always revise this repo rate. It will either increase it or will decrease it based on the inflation. So that also you need to know what are the what happens when the repo rate increases, whether inflation decreases or increases. Okay, basically when the repo rate is less, that means inflation is under control. Okay, so that is how, or usually when inflation is very high, then repo rate will be altered accordingly to change that. And then finally, you also need to know, to improve the uh, interest rate transmission to the banks from the RBI, they have recently made a provision called external benchmarking for loans. So before there used to be internal kind of benchmarking. Now they move to external benchmarking to make the monetary policy transmission effective. So try to read this. So now we'll go to the second topic, that is about electric mobility. Okay. So now here the question goes. Consider the following statements related to National Electric Mobility Mission Plan. NEMMP aims to achieve national fuel security by promoting electric vehicles only in the country. Next one. Under NEMPP 2020, government has launched FAME 2, FAME 1 and FAME 2 to promote manufacturing of electric and hybrid vehicle technology. Third thing, scheme focuses on 4 areas: technology development, demand creation, pilot projects, and charging infrastructure. So which of the above statements are correct? So if you would have already made the guess, then we'll go for the disclosure of answer. So answer is B. So here the trap is in the first statement. So you also can identify the trap by seeing one of the keyword, that is only, electric vehicles only it has specified. So I'm not saying this will be always the case with UPSC also, but in majority of the case, whenever there is only in the statement, in the options of UPSC paper, in the prelims paper, try to read it twice, because usually that is a statement that will be under suspicion and that will be a trap. So usually they will be wrong. So here the first statement, basically this plan is aiming not just electric vehicles but also hybrid vehicles. So that is the important trap. So it includes both electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. And second and third statements are absolutely correct. So like it focuses on those 4 areas, and the FAME 1 and FAME 2 are launched under this scheme. So now we'll see this in detail. So like if you see under this plan, basically this government was trying to, it was launched in 2015, and it said the target was like to achieve 6 to 7 million sales of electric and hybrid vehicles by 2020. But unfortunately we were not able to achieve the target. So we have extended this scheme in the form of FAME 2. So FAME 2 was from 2019 to 2024, and FAME 1 scheme was from 2015 to 2019. So these two schemes were part of this plan or mission. So main objective of this scheme is to achieve the national fuel security, because we are dependent on crude oil. So to achieve that security, we are promoting the hybrid and electric vehicles. So that way we can reduce our import bill and achieve national fuel security. So under that we have to see this FAME 2 scheme. Okay. So as I said, this FAME 2 scheme was launched in 1st April 2019, and it is under Ministry of Heavy Vehicles. Okay. And that ministry has launched this. And second thing, it gives upfront incentive on purchase of electric vehicles. Okay. First component. Second thing, it provides charging infrastructure. And third thing, it also helps in achieving environment pollution and fuel security. So this way it achieves that. And it is covering all the three things, like electric vehicles, three wheelers and four wheelers. And this is about this FAME 2 scheme. So try to see like again read these details, and also try to know more about national biofuels policy, because this is another new event that happened in 2019, where they have went for 3G fuels. Okay, and they are now giving incentive to construct those refineries for the biofuels. Also see what is the ethanol percentage that can be blended with petrol. Right now it is 10%, because these are all the schemes that are mainly to address climate change and pollution at the same time to achieve energy security. So that is why these plans are very important. Like similarly, national action plan on climate change, so this is a big plan. Under this there are four sub plans, so try to see them. And one of the important mission is JN, Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Mission. So under this we are heavily going for solar panels and solar power plants. And then finally, you all know BS6 standards came in, so try to know what is the difference, like in sulfur what is the range, in nitrogen what is the allowed range. So this kind of thing you have to know. So try to see these aspects as well. So now we'll go with the third topic. So first of all, I will explain why this question came in. This question especially came because in September first week there was an appointment to 5 states. Like there was governor appointment for 5 states. That is one thing. And second thing, there was frequently problem with the governor role in India, because usually he is appointed by the central government, and that person is very favorable towards center. And in many cases, the governor used to actually act against even the state government. So that is why there was a large controversy about governor role and the constitutional provisions for governor. So that is why I framed this question, and this is an important topic. You also have to keep much focus on it. Okay, so if you see the question, consider the following statements with respect to governor. The original constitution has provided for appointment of governor for 2 or more states. Second thing, Sarkari Commission and Punchi Committee are associated with suggestions related to appointment and removal of governor. Third thing, governor has a 5-year tenure and he cannot be removed prior to completion of tenure. Which of the above statements are correct? So try to do that logical analysis and mark the option. So if you are done, like here also there is a kind of little bit trap. So if you notice that, then you'll be able to put the correct answer. So here the first statement is saying original constitution. Have you, like, you should get the suspicion why it is referring to the original constitution. It would have mentioned even the constitution has provided. It is saying original constitution, that means it is not covered by amendment. So you need to be suspicious of it, whether it is already there from the original way or any amendment is made to made governor for 2 or more states. So that is why the first option is wrong. Sorry, the first option is wrong. Yes, because initially governor was not, there is no provision in original constitution initially to appoint governor for more than one state. One governor for one state, this was the principle in original constitution. Later we amended that constitution and made governor for 2 states. That is how our Narsimhan was governor for AP and Telangana. So there were many governors that way. And second thing was correct if you had this knowledge. Like always you read about the Sarkari Commission and Punchi Commission, they try to give suggestions. And third thing, the first part of the statement is correct, but the second one is not true. Why? Yes, governor has 5-year tenure, but can he removed before the tenure completion? Yes, he can be removed because he works under the pleasure of president. So until president is okay, he works. If not, he can remove it. So the correct answer is only D. That is 2 only. Now we'll see different aspects of governor. Yes. So here it says like that 7th Constitutional Amendment Act actually provided for appointment of governor for 2 or more states. So that constitutional amendment made it. So that is why original constitution doesn't have. And then roughly remember that article from 153 to 167, if at all, you never know, like UPSC might ask even directly based on article. So try to roughly remember, like from 153 to around 167, you have all the state related executive, that is all the governor discretionary power, approval, removal, and CM, state assembly, all these things are covered under 153 to 167. And 156 is even important because it talks about the removal and tenure. So governor has tenure of 5 years, but he can hold office only during the pleasure of president, and he can resignate by giving the resignation only to the president. Next thing, committees. So these are the four committees that are linked with the governor role. So first one is Sarkari Commission. So Sarkari Commission has recommended that only eminent figures in some walk of life and person outside of politics or outside of state should be appointed. So you need to associate this fact with Sarkari Commission. So whenever Sarkari Commission comes to your mind, you should know it recommended that persons who are not there in the politics should be appointed. Okay. And second thing, Punchi Commission. Punchi Commission should always be linked with removal of governor. That is, impeachment of governor right now is in the hands of president. But if it is like the president impeachment, then governor will have more independence and more bipartisan or unpartisan role he can play in the state. So that is why Punchi Commission recommended impeachment of governor should be made on the same lines of president. So remember always Punchi Commission with removal, Sarkari Commission with approval or appointment. So this way you can identify it, like, because sometimes they might give in the matching pair and they'll give the recommendation and the committee name. And similarly, if you see National Commission to Review the Working of Constitution and Raj Mannar Committee, these are the all committees that are related with recommendations for effective role of governor. So now we have seen this part, but you also have to complete this governor role in 360 degrees. So for that, go back to Lakshmikant and see what are the different discretionary powers of governor, like what majorly he has, like whether he can invite the CM or majority part after elections or not. So these are the discretionary powers. And second thing, there are certain difference in pardon powers between governor and president. Okay, governor has only powers to certain extent, whereas president has more powers. So try to see that difference as well. And similarly, the veto powers and the removal process between difference between president and governor. So if you cover all this, then the governor will be comprehensively covered. So that is about third one. And now fourth question. This question is related to NRC. And you all know, like, I don't need to emphasize this fact, like NRC was the most dominant thing in 2019, NRC and CAA. So we shouldn't focus or restrict ourselves to just NRC. There are various other topics that we also need to study. Some of the important ones I've covered in this slide, but you also need to focus this as a most priority topic, because there might be a definite question on somewhere around citizenship or articles related to citizenship or theory about citizenship. Okay, so before that, we'll first see this question. So consider the following statements with respect to National Registry of Citizens. So first statement, NRC exercise was for the first time started in Assam from 2013. Second one, the entire process is mandated and supervised by Supreme Court. Third thing, Assam Accord, which forms the basis, puts the cutoff date as 24th March 1971 to identify the Indian citizens in Assam actually. Okay, so these are the three statements. So now try to write your answer. So if it is done, then we'll see what is the correct answer here. So again, as I said, locate for those keywords and then try to see whether it is suspicious or not. For example, if you see the first statement, I'm saying it was the first time started in Assam from 2013. So now you should get a suspicion, you should get a doubt whether is it true, because he is mentioning first time, because usually those kind of statements are the wrong ones. Here, as I said, the first statement is wrong. Actually, NRC was first done in 1951. So that was the first exercise. And then in 2013, Supreme Court has ordered for a revision of that. Okay, because there was an Assam Accord on which government has the responsibility to do that. So that is why Supreme Court asked or mandated to do the revision of NRC of 1951. So that is why the 1951 was the first one. So it becomes the second one. So the first statement is wrong. And second one, as I said, it is mandated and supervised by Supreme Court. And third thing, Assam Accord is the main accord. So now I'll explain the history later, like what is Assam Accord, how it came and all. But right now, remember that it becomes a basis, and 24th March 1971 is the cutoff date to determine whether they fall under the list as Indian citizens or not. So whoever have come before 24th March 1971, they'll be eligible or they'll be considered as Indian citizens. So someone after that date will not be considered under this NRC list. So the answer is D, 2 and 3. So the first one is wrong here. So now we'll see this in detail. So like what is this problem is basically I'll just briefly explain in 1 minute. So you all know that we have Bangladesh. So Bangladesh used to be earlier East Pakistan. So when they, and there used to be many Hindu and Bengali refugees coming out from East Pakistan, and finally it became 1971 war. So during that time many of the people came and settled down in Assam. So because they have settled down, so the Assamese identity or Assamese people became or are becoming a minority. So there was a kind of protest happening in Assam because of the large settlement of refugees and illegal migration happening to the Assam state. So to address that, finally in 1985, Rajiv Gandhi government made an accord called Assam Accord. So according to this agreement, the central government will do an exercise to identify who are the illegal migrants and who are the native Indian citizens of Assam. And after identification, that illegal immigrants who are identified will be deported back to the source state. So this was the accord. So this accord was not implemented until it went to Supreme Court, and finally Supreme Court in 2013 started this exercise of NRC revision. So that is NRC. So here you can see. So register was first prepared after 1951 census of India, and it has not been updated until recently. And Assam becomes the first state in the country. Okay. And Supreme Court started this process in 2013. What is the cutoff date? As I said, it is March 25, 1971. So according to this, as per the Assam Accord, all the persons will be detected, deleted and expelled in accordance with the law. Those, and what is the outcome? Like once the NRC is done, they'll identify the list who are not part of NRC. So once that list is identified, then they will be given an option. Like there are, this also needs to be focused. Okay. So once suppose NRC is done, and if you're not in the list, then you'll be given an option to appear under Foreigners Tribunal. Okay. And Foreigners Tribunal will be given a time period of 6 months to investigate and dispose the case. So if you still were not considered as citizen, then you can go from Foreigners Tribunal to either High Court or Supreme Court. So this way you have three kind of levels where you can still fight the any wrongdoing or not being there in the list. And once you finally been declared by even courts that you are not an Indian citizen, then you will be moved to or deported back to the source country. So this is a kind of follow-up process. And finally, also try to know about Foreigners Act. Like Foreigners Act is the main act that gives the government the power to expel foreigners from India. Okay. And then what is the further reading that we need to do? That is National Population Register. Because NRC became so controversial, central government actually planned to extend NRC, which is done in Assam, to entire India. And then it said because it is controversy, so they said they will do National Population Register for now, and then we'll see in future if we can do NRC. So right now they are planning to do NPR as well, that is National Population Register. So now you need to know the difference between NPR and NRC. That I've covered in the next slide, but this is something that you need to focus as well. And also, what are the constitutional articles that give or can revoke the citizenship? And finally, there are certain theories. There are two basic theories for citizenship. One is jus soli and the other is jus sanguine. Okay. So jus soli basically soil theory. That means if you are born in a soil, that you need to be given a citizenship. For example, anyone who is born in America will get the American citizenship. Okay. So that is jus soli. Whereas sanguine is based on blood. That is whether your father is Indian citizen or not. So India is basically started with soli and then slowly moved towards sanguine. So just know this concept. You don't need to remember, but if you know them, so that even they might ask a concept related question. Like they might ask, what is the basis of Indian citizenship? So that is why I'm telling this details. So try to focus on this as well. Now this is about NPR. So NPR is basically used to identify a usual resident. Okay, that is the difference between NPR and NRC. NRC is basically to identify whether you are an Indian citizen or not. Okay, if you possess certain documents and then if you prove, then you are you are Indian citizen. But NPR is basically to find who is the usual resident. That means, for example, you are basically a resident of Warangal, but you have moved to Hyderabad like for 6 months or more than that to do the work. Then you will become a citizen, usual resident of Hyderabad, not Warangal. So this is used to identify that and to target welfare schemes to that section, because we know that certain schemes are implemented for rural India, certain for urban India. So by having this data, government can directly target them. So this is the main showcased objective of NPR. So this is about NPR. In NPR, try to remember this. What is usual resident? So usual resident is defined a person who has resided in an area for past 6 months or more, or who intends to reside in that area for next 6 months. So that means either in the past 6 months, or if you are planning for next 6 months, then you will become usual resident. And the documents will be here, like identity details, Aadhaar, passport, and voter ID will be used to identify. Okay, so that is about NPR. Now these are the Indian Constitution articles that deal with citizenship. So this also you need to have a rough idea. So like Article 5 talks about citizenship at the commencement of constitution. That is whoever is in India, whoever are Indians before we got the independence or before the constitution comes into force, those people will be automatically considered under citizenship under Article 5. And then you have Article 6, like for the people who have migrated, because we had partition and refugees. And then Article 17 for certain class, and then 18 for people who are going out of India but are of Indian origin. So for them, like overseas citizenship. So that is the concept of Article 18. And then Article 9, like if you acquire a foreign state, India doesn't allow dual citizenship. Remember this fact. So there is no dual citizenship concept in India. If you are getting an American citizenship, then you will automatically be foregoing the Indian citizenship. So you'll have only one citizenship. So that is the Article 9. And then Article 10 about the continuance. And remember this Article 11 also. 11 is very important. Parliament has the right to make law to regulate the citizenship. So this is the article which the government is using to actually make the amendments to Citizenship Act. For all this CAA is based on this Article 11. So Article 11 and Article 9 are different, important out of this. But roughly remember, from Article 5 to 11 deals with citizenship for Indians. Okay, so now we'll deal with the fifth topic. So that is about technology. So like why this question came in, because every year one or the other technology will be in the news and UPSC picks this up. Like it doesn't ask about the concepts in technology. Like it might not be going always about the theoretical aspects like black holes and all. It is nowadays focusing on applied part. Like if there is a technology, how we can use in the day-to-day life. For example, if you remember, there was a question on Internet of Things. They given a description and said which technology is this. Similarly, there was a question on AI. So that is why this year you all know there was an important development about FASTag. You would have already heard, right? Like if there is a highway toll, if you are going by a car, now you need to have compulsory RFID mandated FASTag, so that you can automatically detect the amount. You don't need to pay toll fee by cash directly. Okay, so that is why we have framed this question. So now the first point or the question: consider the following facts related to a new technology being used in India and then identify the technology from the options given. First one: in this, tags are used to store information data, and then data is read from this tag or label by a device without physical contact. Second thing, technology enables even outside line of sight data reading capability. Third thing, it is currently used in fast tags to enable seamless movement of vehicles at highway tolls. So by this time you would have already guessed the answer. This is a bit easy. So the answer is straight away, it is RFID technology. So answer is C. So now we'll just see the important differences, okay, and then we'll see the concept in detail. So now first of all, what is the difference between barcode and QR code? So if you see, barcode is the one which we use in shopping malls. So whenever you get a product, they will just scan it using a scanner and they'll disclose the price. So it is basically using the laser code. So that is barcode. Now what is QR code? QR code is an extension of barcode technology where you will use camera of your phone to identify the information that is encrypted in that image. For example, this Google Pay, all this Phone Pay, all that are QR code, and it is kind of can two-dimensional image, so more information can be stored. So that is why it is an advancement over barcode. Now what is RFID? RFID is nothing but radio frequency technology, and the main difference between RFID and QR code is that whereas QR code and barcode needs direct line of sight, that means you need to put the product in front of your camera or the scanner. But for RFID, do we need that? We don't need that because it uses radio waves, so you don't need to put it in front of the scanner. If you are in that range like Wi-Fi, you can scan it. So that is the main difference between these three. And finally, OCR is nothing but this optical camera recognition. That is, if you write text, then if you scan it, it will automatically become as an Word document or electronic form. So it will translate from manual to electronic form. That is OCR technology. So now we'll see detail in about RFID. So like RFID belongs to a group of technologies. Like I mentioned some of them, like the barcode, QR code, and RFID. All of these are grouped under a category called automatic data identification and data capture. As I said, automatic data identification. So it will automatically identify and capture the data from identified object. So that is why this group. And now we are using it for traffic management. Apart from FASTag, another important application where RFID is being used is GST e-way bills. So like whenever there is a GST truck, and if you have this e-way mechanism, you can use RFID to actually scan the e-way bill, and you don't need to stop the truck for the movement. So that is how we are improving the logistics using this technology. So that is another application. So you need to remember this. And finally, this is the process, like how it does. Basically, it will have a tag, it will have data stored, and then it generates radio waves, and that radio waves will be detected and will be converted back to the electronic form. That is how it will work. So now this is done. Okay, only important point you have to remember from this is RFID works on even without the line of sight access. So that is the important advantage. Now what is the further reading that you have to see? That is, recently there was a lot of news about this fintech. Like fintech, when we say financial technology companies like Google Pay, similarly like first time we have this Beam app. So there were questions on Beam app also, like UPI. What is this UPI? What is the mechanism behind it? Whether feature phones are covered or not. So this falls under fintech. So there are new developments coming up. Now the government is actually planning to use even WhatsApp as a payment mechanism. So this is a kind of development. What is the technology used to do that? Or for example, recently ATM cards are being given with the chip. So what is that chip importance? How can it secure the ATM card? So this kind of information you need to know in the financial technologies. And second thing, in that financial technologies itself, these are the examples like peer-to-peer lending. So peer-to-peer lending is basically a company asking other company for direct borrowing. So they don't give any security or collateral deposit, and they will borrow between the companies. That is peer-to-peer lending. So these fintech companies are actually exploiting that concept. So that way they are providing more money directly to the companies. And then finally you have new payment mechanisms, and it is near field communication. This is important. So like right now this NFC is being used in debit cards. For example, you don't need to swipe a debit card. If you just put a debit card on a point of sale machine, it will automatically deduct amount if it is below some threshold. So that is NFC. So NFC is something kind of RFID technology that is used to actually provide ease of living. So try to read more about this NFC as well. And then in science and technology area, we have 5G advances like Internet of Things, AI, machine learning, and then big data developments. Like right now, there are some languages that came in. So try to see the basic mechanism or basic developments in these areas. With that, you will be able to cover most of the science and technology sector. So now, if you have not already seen the answer, so try to read the question and guess the answer. Okay, I'll read the question for you. So the sixth question is related to Motor Vehicles Amendment Act. Consider the following statements with respect to recently passed Motor Vehicle Amendment Act 2019. So the first point: Good Samaritans who attend accident victims will be liable for civil prosecution, not criminal prosecution for negligence. Second thing, the act does cover even taxi digital aggregators like Ola and Uber. Third thing, the act provides for framing National Transportation Policy and Road Safety Board. So for these kind of questions, if you know the answer, if you know the provisions, it is very good. If you don't know, even we can do a kind of logical guessing. So that is my main intention of always putting these kind of questions in three statement way. Okay, so I will explain now. So now, first of all, this act is very, very important this year because this is the first time we have amended this act after 30 years and to address a major problem of road accidents. If you know, India is the leader in this motor vehicle accidents or road accidents. Like every year, 5 lakh accidents are happening and 2 lakh people are dying. So that is why this act became so much important. And another thing why this came in news is, if you know, just after this act in September first week, there were people who just gave their scooters instead of paying the fine. So that is the level of fine that was increased. There was a news like one guy, he just gave the scooter to inspector because for not wearing helmet, not having the license, the fine is 5,000. Earlier it used to be 500. So that is the scale of punishment. It is increased 10 times. So that is why you need to know also some good features about this act. So coming back to the question, the answer is A. Okay. So which of the following above statements are correct? So the first statement is wrong because these good Samaritans are the people who are actually trying to help the accident victims to attend them or to get them to the hospital. Okay, so that is why you will have any kind of prosecution on them, because if you have even civil prosecution or civil case, will anybody act? Like if you see an accident, already people will fear, like you will be asked to come to police station or give FIR and all. So that is why this act said will not have any kind of prosecution on people who help accident victims. So that is why first option is wrong, and 2 and 3 both are provisions of new act. So that is why answer is 2 and 3. So now we will see important features of this act. As I said, this act improved fines like 10 times, and the main example is here, like driving without license is right now 5,000. And second thing, one important feature is compensation for road accident victims. So right now we have very less compensation that we have increased. For example, if there is a death out of road accident, then that will be of 2 lakh rupees. Okay, and grievous injury it will be 50,000, because if somebody lost the life, then that entire family will be almost going into poverty. So that is why this compensation was increased. And then if you see, usually in the news in US and all, there will be a recall of vehicles. For example, if there is any fault in the piece, that company will ask to recall all the vehicles. That is, that vehicles will be called to service center. Either they will be replaced that part or will give the compensation. But in India, we don't have government mandating that exercise. So that is why we have this provision where central government can order recall of defected motor vehicles. And third thing, cashless treatment for victims during golden hour. So what is this golden hour? Golden hour is first 1 hour after the accident to save the life of people, because it is that 1 hour where you need critical care. So that is why cashless treatment will be provided across hospitals. And next thing, third party insurance will also be there, and interim relief will also be provided until that claim amount is provided by the insurer. And then finally, compulsory insurance for all road users by setting up motor vehicles fund. So government is setting up a fund and saying all road users, right from cycle to lorry, will be covered under insurance. As I said, good Samaritan will not be covered under criminal or civil action. And then you have establishment of National Road Safety Board and National Transportation Policy. Okay, and this new concept came, this new development called taxi aggregators like Ola and Uber. What they do, they actually don't get any license, but they give business to all the taxi people. So they don't have any kind of accountability. So to bring them under law, they have started this, bringing them under this. So they can be issued licenses by state government under this act. So now this is done. So similar to motor vehicles, there's another act that came in 2019, that is Consumer Protection Act. So try to read that as well. It is very, very important. And also there were certain schemes, certain apps and programs launched by Ministry of Road Transport. Okay. That Transport Ministry also launched some schemes. So try to just know them, because you never know. They might ask even the scheme names apart from these provisions. So this is important from this aspect. And now finally, the last topic of today, that is schemes, social security schemes. And these schemes are very important right now, because even International Labour Organization has commented that because of AI and several disruptions, right now what we need is extending social security. So that is why social security schemes, whichever comes in the news, are always important from PRIM's point of view, because they extend the insurance cover for the people, vulnerable people, especially informal sector. So if you see the question, consider the following government social security schemes and match the section of population covered. So it is a kind of match the scheme, and whichever is correct, mark them. So first one, PM Kisan Mandan Yojana. It talks about direct payment of 6,000 in 3 equal installments to small and marginal farmers. And then PM Kisan Yojana, pension scheme for farmers. Third thing, PM Lagu Vyapari Yojana, covers shopkeepers, retail traders, and self-employed persons. Finally, PM Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, available to all people above age group of 18 years. So out of this, only one is correct. So try to choose that. So here again, if you use somewhat common sense, you can eliminate the options. So for example, if you already know Kisan Yojana, because that was constantly in the news and you would have read many times, it is about giving direct benefit transfer. So Kisan is nothing but direct payment. So here I have interchanged A and B associated options. So that is why A and B both are wrong, because Kisan refers to direct benefit transfer of 6,000 rupees. Whereas Kisan Mandan refers to the pension scheme. Always remember, like even Lagu Vyapari Mandan, then it is extension of pension scheme. So first two are wrong. And then if you see the D1, you might think it is correct. But here also, Jeevan Jyoti is covered only for 18 to 50 years, not above that, not below that. So that is why D is also correct. That is why you have to very precise with this kind of provisions for the schemes. So here the answer is C. So now we'll see different social security schemes and their important provisions. So if you see, this Lagu Vyapari was recently launched in 2019 to cover the informal sector, especially this shopkeepers, retail traders, and the self-employed persons. Because other schemes are covering everyone, like Atal Pension Yojana, it covers the government employees and other who are interested. And then you have Jeevan Jyoti for accident and all. And then you have Shram Mandan Yogi to cover this real estate workers who are informal sector and all. But there was no scheme to cover this kirana stores or the shopkeepers and the small retail traders. So that is why government launched this in 2019. So as per this, they have minimum scheme of minimum pension guarantee of 3,000 per month after 60 years. And who are eligible? All retail traders with GST turnover below 1.5 crore. Remember this, all GST turnover below 1.5 crore are eligible for this, and age of between 18 and 40. And this can be done by self declaration. You can straight away go to the bank website and declare. And then you have Kisan Mandan Yojana. As I said, Mandan, if it refers to then pension scheme. So it is about giving 3,000 same monthly pension to 18 and 40 after reaching 60. So all small and marginal farmers. And how we define small and marginal farmers? Who are having less than 2 hectares land, they can be eligible for this. And then you have Suraksha Bima and Jeevan Jyoti. And difference between them also is, something you need to focus, because Suraksha talks about a premium of 12 rupees per annum, and it's about accident, like you will get 2 lakhs for accident. Okay. And eligibility is between 18 to 70 years. This is very large. But whereas if you see Jeevan Jyoti, Here it is talking about same 2 lakh, but it's only 330 per annum. And this is not just about accident, but even about the death because of diseases and natural things. That is the difference. Suraksha talks about accident, whereas Jeevan Jyoti is about normal death. And then finally you have Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana. This is direct benefit transfer. So